The void of space was calm, but it was the kind of calm that made soldiers uneasy. In the far reaches of the Kareth sector, an alien fleet floated in perfect formation. Dozens of warships stood watch, their armor shining under the dim light of a dying star. They were there for one purpose: stop any vessel from crossing the border without permission. On the command deck of the Kareth flagship, Admiral Tarvin sat stiff in his chair. His 4 golden eyes scanned the holomap in front of him. Each green dot represented a friendly ship, and the empty space beyond was quiet. Too quiet, he leaned forward, tapping the edge of the display. "Anything unusual on long range?" he asked in a low voice. The sensor officer shook his head. "Nothing so far, Admiral." The officer replied, "Just drifting asteroids and debris fields." Tarvin's spine tail flicked once, an old habit when his nerves stirred. The Kareth sector was far from the core worlds, but it was not unimportant. Smugglers tried to pass through, pirates tested the patrols, and sometimes military spies made the mistake of crossing. But the Admiral had handled all of that before. This felt different, though he could not yet say why then. A small tone echoed from the sensor station. "Contact," the officer said sharply, his voice losing its calm. Tarvin's head turned. "What size?" The officer's hands moved quickly over the controls. "Small. Very small. Heat signature minimal. But speed. Speed is abnormal." Tarvin's brow plates lowered. "How abnormal?" "Crossing 1 light minute in under 9 seconds. The Admiral straightened. "That's impossible for a freighter." "It's not a freighter," the officer said. "Shielding is." "Strange. It's scrambling our scans." Around the bridge, quiet murmurs began. Every veteran there had seen fast ships, but not like this. One of the junior officers whispered the thought that others kept to themselves. Could it be one of them? The words hung in the air like a shadow. Tarvin's jaw tightened. He had been in service long enough to know what one of them meant. Humans. The race that had once made the galaxy tremble. The race that had vanished into their own territory centuries ago, leaving only records and scars. The Admiral didn't answer, but he could not ignore the similarities. This ship's energy pattern was like nothing modern sensors could read, exactly as the ancient war files described. "Get me visuals," Tarvin ordered. The main display flickered. Static at first, then a shape emerged. It was long, narrow, its dark hull almost swallowing the starlight around it. No glowing banners, no fleet insignia. It moved like a POV. Predator smooth, deliberate, not wasting motion. "Transmit standard border command," Tarvin said. The comms officer nodded and sent the message. "You are entering restricted space. Identify yourself and state your purpose." For a moment, there was no reply. The bridge crew exchanged uneasy looks. Then the speakers crackled with a voice, deep and calm. "This is the Terran cruiser Vanguard. We are on course. We will not deviate." Several officers froze in place. The word Terran was like a ghost something from old war stories. The Vanguard did not slow. It did not ask permission. It simply continued forward, as if the Kareth fleet was nothing more than empty space. "Should I order the blockade to move in?" the tactical officer asked. Tarvin hesitated. In theory, yes, protocol demanded it. In practice, no one in the galaxy wanted to be the first to provoke a human ship. He had read the archived accounts, fleets of hundreds shattered by only a handful of human vessels. The way they fought was different, unpredictable, ruthless, efficient. He pressed a clawed finger against the comm switch. "Vanguard, this is Admiral Tarvin of the Kareth fleet. You are in violation of interstellar law. Change course immediately." There was another pause. Then came the same calm voice. No threat, no insult, just a single word. It was more unnerving than open aggression. The tactical officer shifted in his seat. "They're ignoring all standard engagement signals." Tarvin leaned back, his tail coiling slowly behind him. "Keep formation. Do not fire unless ordered." Out in the darkness, the human cruiser grew larger on the screen. Its hull reflected almost no light. making it appear like a moving shadow. Sensors still couldn't penetrate its shield layer, the Kareth fleet's. Targeting computers kept losing lock, as though the Vanguard wasn't there at all. Inside the human ship, the mood was entirely different. The bridge of the Vanguard was quiet, lit only by soft blue glows from control panels. Captain Elias Ward sat in his chair, a calm expression on his face. He was a tall man with short black hair, his uniform crisp, his posture relaxed. Around him, the crew worked with the precision of people who had done this before. None of them looked nervous, if anything. They looked focused like hunters closing in on prey. A young officer approached the captain. Kareth fleet is holding position. They've broadcast 3 warnings. Ward nodded slowly. Any sign of weapons powering? Minimal. They're scared, sir. The captain allowed the faintest smile. They should be. On the Vanguard's lower decks, engineers moved. Between humming consoles, checking readouts, one of them, a woman named Imani Cole, adjusted a panel and spoke into her headset. Shields holding steady. No interference. Another engineer asked, "Are we really just going to sail right through their defense line?" Imani smirked. "Orders are orders. Besides, they won't stop us." Back on the Kareth flagship, tension grew thicker by the second. Tarvin could feel the eyes of every ship captain in the blockade waiting for his command. Some wanted to retreat, others wanted to test their weapons against this legend from the past. The Admiral's mind weighed the risks if they attacked and lost. It would be the shame of his people for generations. If they didn't act, the Council would accuse him of weakness. He tapped his claw against the armrest. "Prepare intercept formation," he ordered finally. The fleet began to shift, ships angling to create a wall of metal and plasma. Engines glowed brighter, their heat signatures flaring across the tactical map. But the Vanguard didn't change speed, didn't change course. It moved like the blockade was already irrelevant. The distance closed 2 million kilometers, 1,500,000. The tension on the bridge was a living thing. Then, without warning, the Vanguard transmitted a short data burst. It was encrypted. The Kareth comms team scrambled to decode it. When the meaning appeared on their screens, several officers stiffened. It's a surrender code," one of them said in disbelief. Tarvin's head snapped toward him. "A what?" "Yes, Admiral. An ancient battle code from the Human-Vorlon War." "But that doesn't make sense. Why would they send this?" The Admiral knew the stories. The code wasn't really surrender. It was a trick in every recorded case. When an enemy closed in on the surrendering human ship, it ended with the enemy's destruction. His claws tapped the armrest again. "They're playing with us," he muttered. The comms officer's voice was tight. "Admiral, orders?" Tarvin looked back at the screen, at the shadow moving steadily toward them. "Hold position," he said at last, his voice quiet. "Let's see what they do." The alien fleet held its breath. So did the galaxy, watching from afar. And the Vanguard kept coming. The blockade ships floated in tight formation, their hulls glowing faintly from shield energy. But though every weapon was charged and every engine was ready, none dared to fire. The shadow of the human cruiser drifted closer, unstoppable, silent and cold. Admiral Tarvin felt his throat tighten. He had faced pirate armadas, rebel fleets, and even wild stellar beasts. Yet nothing compared to this, the weight of a single name. Human. The word itself carried echoes of old fear. Fear passed down from ancestor to child, from soldier to cadet. Fear carved into the very treaties of the galaxy. "Admiral, their course remains steady," the tactical officer said, his voice dry. "Estimated time until contact, 23 minutes. Tarvin did not reply at once. His golden eyes stayed fixed on the screen. Every instinct inside him screamed to act. Yet every memory reminded him what happened to those who acted too quickly against humans. On the lower deck of the flagship, officers whispered among themselves. Some had never seen a human ship before, only heard myths. Others had studied war records, grainy footage of tiny Terran destroyers ripping apart fleets 10 times there. Sighs, they spoke in hushed tones, as though even saying the name too loudly would bring disaster. One officer, young and nervous, muttered, "My grandfather told me humans do not fight fair. They use tricks. They use fear itself as a weapon." Another replied bitterly, "Maybe they are only myths. Maybe this ship is an imitation." But even as he said the words, his voice cracked in the center of the galaxy, far from the cold silence of the Karith sector. The news had already spread. Relays carried whispers of it from system to system. Merchants spoke of it in spaceports. Soldiers debated it in barracks. Leaders argued in council chambers. "One cruiser," the broadcast said. "One cruiser entered the sector." Every race, from insectoid hives to crystalline colonies, asked the same question. Why now? Inside the Vanguard, Captain Elias Ward remained calm. He stood near the forward viewport, hands clasped behind his back. The galaxy was staring at him, and he knew it. But to him, this was not a performance. This was duty. His young lieutenant approached. "Sir, alien networks are broadcasting live feeds. Whole star systems are watching our movements." Ward nodded. "Good. Let them see." "But sir," the lieutenant hesitated, "if they think we're here for war." Ward turned his sharp eyes toward him. "We didn't come for war. But if they test us, they'll remember why they feared us." The words carried a weight heavier than weapons fire. They reminded the lieutenant that this mission was not simply travel. It was a message on the bridge of the flagship. "Admiral." Tarvin ordered the history officer forward. She was an elder, her scales dulled with age but her mind sharp. "Tell them," he commanded. "Tell the young ones why this shadow makes even my claws shake." The elder stood tall. "In the wars of old," she began, "humans were few. They did not outnumber their enemies. They did not outbuild them. But they outthought them." The crew listened, silent. They turned gravity itself into a weapon, dropping moons upon fleets. They infected starships with false signals so that their own allies destroyed each other. They fought with desperation, with cunning, with a fire that could not be measured. Her eyes narrowed. And when the galaxy gathered an armada of 1,000 ships to break them, humans broke it instead. Not with strength, but with something worse, unpredictability. The bridge went quiet. Tarvin closed his eyes. He knew the stories. But hearing them spoken again while the Vanguard closed the gap sent a chill through every officer present. The comms officer broke the silence. "Admiral, incoming transmissions from several allied systems. They demand updates. They want assurance this is under control." The Admiral gave a bitter laugh. "Under control," he muttered. "Yes, tell them the galaxy waits for one cruiser to decide its fate." Back aboard the Vanguard, the crew remained disciplined. Yet beneath the surface, each of them understood the danger. A single mistake could ignite a war that had slept for centuries. Engineer Imani Cole sat in the humming engine bay, staring at the readouts. The shields held steady, their pattern a design no alien computer could trace. She leaned toward her colleague. "Do you feel it?" she whispered. He frowned. "Feel what?" "The silence," she said. "They're not just watching us with eyes, they're watching with fear." The silence outside feels heavy. On the alien flagship, the tension grew. Some captains begged permission to fire. Others warned that doing so would be suicide. Messages poured into Tarvin's command deck, each one louder than the last. "Stop them now before they reach the core. If you hesitate, they will think us weak. You must destroy them." But one message stood out among the noise. It came from the High Council itself. It said only 3 words: "Do not fail." Tarvin felt the weight of those words settle upon his chest. He looked again at the advancing shadow, the human cruiser. That moved without fear. For the first time in decades, he understood what his ancestors must have felt. This was not just a ship. This was a reminder. A reminder that the galaxy's greatest predator had not gone extinct. "Admiral," the tactical officer said, "they are less than 10 minutes away. Shields?" Untouched, weapons? Cold, they haven't armed anything. That answer shook the crew more than if the Vanguard had aimed every cannon. It wasn't afraid, it wasn't preparing, it was simply moving. The comm suddenly crackled again. It was the human captain's voice, steady, cold. This is the Vanguard. We are not here for you. We are not here for war. But we will not stop. Then silence returned. Every officer on the alien bridge looked at Tarvin. What could he say? What order could he give? Anything he chose now would echo across the galaxy for centuries. Finally, he whispered, "Hold. Let us see where this goes." And so, the fleets of the Kareth sector, armed with thousands of weapons, did nothing. They held their breath, they waited, and the shadow of the human cruiser slid closer, carrying with it the weight of history. The galaxy trembled not because of what it had done, but because of what it might still do. The human cruiser Vanguard moved like a shadow across the stars. Ahead of it, the blockade spread wide, hundreds of alien ships forming a wall of steel and fire. Behind them stretched the Kareth sector, nervous and silent, every outpost listening. Every eye fixed on the unfolding drama on the command deck of the Kareth flagship. Admiral Tarvin gripped the arm of his chair. Sweat beaded beneath the ridges of his scales, though the air was cool. His golden eyes tracked the approaching vessel. Each second, the distance shrank. Each second, the weight pressing against. His chest grew heavier. They are now within firing range, the tactical officer said quietly. The words felt like the crack of thunder in the silence of the bridge. Every officer turned toward the admiral, waiting for him to give the command. No one wanted to say out loud. Tarvin hesitated. He knew that a single order could light the spark of war. Yet to allow the human ship through would brand him as weak before the council. His tail twitched against the floor. The only outward sign of his storming thoughts. "Transmit." "Once more," he said finally. The comms officer's voice trembled as he spoke the blockade's warning across the void. "This is your final command. Stop your engines. Power down weapons. Submit to inspection or face destruction." The message carried across the stars, bouncing through relay towers, picked up by listening stations, repeated endlessly until entire worlds held their breath. It was not just the Kareth fleet that listened, it was the galaxy itself. And then came the reply. It was the same voice, the same calm tone. No, just one word, no emotion, no arrogance, no plea. It was not the voice of someone bluffing. It was the voice of someone who did not need to explain. Tarvin's claws tapped against his chair. For a moment, he wondered if the humans had chosen this voice deliberately, one that carried no anger, no fear, something that sounded like stone. Unshakable. "Admiral, they are still advancing," the tactical officer said. "Range? 80,000 kilometers and closing." The admiral inhaled slowly. "Form battle lock," he ordered. The fleet shifted, their ships aligning into overlapping arcs of fire. Thousands of cannons charged, plasma coils glowing with restrained fury. It was the strongest blockade the sector had ever mustered. Against one cruiser, inside the Vanguard, the atmosphere was strangely calm. Captain Elias Ward stood with hands folded behind his back, his gaze steady. Around him, the crew worked in silence, their movements smooth and precise. There was no panic, no hesitation. If anything, there was anticipation. Lieutenant Cara Vance looked up from her console. "Sir, alien fleet is powering weapons." "Full battle lock." Ward tilted his head slightly. "Expected. Orders?" "Stay on course," he said, his voice steady. "Do not fire." "Not unless I say so." His words echoed across the bridge like a second shield. The crew obeyed without question. For them, this was not madness, this was procedure. They trusted their captain, they trusted their ship, and above all, they trusted the name they carried. Human, in the Kareth flagship. Nervous murmurs filled the air. Some officers wanted to retreat. Others demanded to fire. The tension reached a breaking point. Finally, one of the younger captains in the blockade acted without permission on the far edge of the formation. A massive destroyer fired. Bolts of plasma lanced across the void. Streaks of burning light racing toward the vanguard. Gasps filled the bridge as every officer turned toward the admiral. But it was too late. The shot struck the human cruiser. They should have burned through shields, seared hull plates, and carved into the ship's spine. Instead, the energy spread across the dark surface like water poured onto glass. The light shimmered once, and then vanished. The vanguard continued. Forward without a scratch, without slowing, without even rocking from impact. On the alien bridge, silence followed. One officer whispered, "That was impossible," another stammered. "Shields should not. No known design can." But Tarvin knew. His stomach twisted as the ancient reports came back to life in his memory. This was exactly how the humans had fought before technology. Beyond explanation, shields that defied physics, weapons that crippled fleets in ways no one understood. The comms crackled again. It was not a voice this time. It was a short burst of data, encrypted. Alien computers scrambled to read it. Finally, the code resolved on their screens. "Surrender," it read, a mocking echo of history. The exact signal the humans had used centuries ago to bait their enemies. Gasps spread through the Kareth fleet. Young officers paled. Veterans whispered prayers to gods they had long abandoned. Tarvin stood slowly. "They're daring us," he said softly, his voice heavy. The tactical officer turned. Eyes wide. "Admiral, what do we do?" The admiral looked at the screen, at the advancing shadow that had absorbed their strongest shot like rain on stone. He thought of the council, of their demands, of their threats. He thought of history, of the wars no one wished to repeat. He thought of the galaxy itself, watching, holding its breath. "Prepare counterstrike," he ordered at last. The fleet adjusted. Cannons glowing brighter, engines burning hot, across the void. The vanguard still did nothing. It did not raise weapons. It did not send more signals. It simply came closer. Inside the human ship, Lieutenant Vance leaned toward the captain. "Sir, their fleet is about to fire." Ward's expression did not change. "Let them," he said. He raised one hand slowly. "When they do, I want every system ready. No weapons, not yet. Just show them." The engineer's voice came over comms. "Ready, Captain. Power cores aligned. Containment stable." Ward nodded once. "Good. Hold steady." And then it came. The alien fleet unleashed its fury. Hundreds of plasma bolts, missiles, and energy beams filled the void. The night between stars lit up like a storm. Every weapon designed to destroy cruisers, carriers, even stations, all aimed at one ship. The storm struck the vanguard. The void burned bright. Screens filled with light so fierce it blinded sensors. For moments, no one could see what remained. When the glare faded, the human cruiser drifted forward, untouched. The energy washed off its shields like waves breaking against stone cliffs. Not a scratch marked its hull. Not a single light flickered inside. On the alien flagship, silence held. Dozens of captains reported in, their voices filled with disbelief. "Full strike ineffective. Shields not even dented. It's not possible." Tarvin closed his eyes. "It is possible," he whispered. "Because they are human." Inside the vanguard, Ward sat calmly. He leaned forward and spoke a single order. Now, at once, the cruiser released a pulse. Not a weapon of destruction, but something stranger. Invisible waves spread across space. Every alien ship shuddered as systems went dark. Engines stalled, weapons powered down, lights flickered out. Hundreds of warships floated helplessly in silence. Their crews stared in horror as they realized they had not even been fired upon. On the Kareth flagship, panic spread. Officers shouted reports. "We've lost power. Engines offline. Weapons unresponsive." The entire fleet had been crippled in a single moment. And through it all, the vanguard kept moving. Unstoppable, calm, silent, Admiral Tarvin gripped the rail, his claws digging into the metal. He had no words, only the weight of history. pressing down on him. For the galaxy had just been reminded of a truth it had tried to forget. One human cruiser was enough. Enough. The battlefield was silent. Hundreds of alien warships drifted powerless, their engines dead, their weapons cold, their crews staring at blank screens. The mighty Kareth blockade, the pride of the sector, had been turned into floating debris. Without a single shot fired, and through the middle of that helpless armada, the human cruiser Vanguard kept moving. It glided with the calm of a predator that no longer needed to prove itself. Its dark hull shimmered faintly, shields humming. With quiet power inside, the crew worked with calm precision, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. On the Kareth flagship, panic turned to disbelief. Officers shouted reports, their voices sharp with fear. Backup systems unresponsive. Communications jammed. Even life support sensors have reset. Admiral Tarvin stood frozen, his claws gripping the rail, his 4 golden eyes fixed on the screen. It was not just defeat, it was humiliation. They had not even been allowed the dignity of a fight. They didn't fire a weapon, whispered the tactical officer. It was only a pulse. Tarvin said nothing. He remembered the ancient stories. Humans did not fight wars the way others did. They fought to break the spirit before the body. This was proof. On worlds across the galaxy, news of the event spread faster. Then light. Every relay station carried the footage. Every council chamber replayed the moment when the Kareth fleet fell silent. Merchants in markets whispered to each other. Did you see it? One ship disabled an entire armada. Soldiers in barracks trembled. If they return in numbers, no one can stop them. Politicians shouted across tables. This is an act of war. No, it is a warning. No, it is a message. In the core systems, the high councils argued. Some demanded immediate retaliation. Others urged diplomacy. But no one could deny the truth. The galaxy had just witnessed the return of humans. Inside the Vanguard, Captain Elias Ward sat in his chair. He listened as his officers reported. The results: enemy fleet disabled. No fatalities. Systems intact but dormant. Ward nodded slowly. Good. That will be enough. Lieutenant Caravance frowned. Sir, with respect, we've revealed our hand. Every system in the galaxy knows what we can do now. Ward glanced at her, his expression calm. They needed to remember, he said. Fear keeps them cautious. And caution keeps them alive. Down in engineering, Imani Cole adjusted the power regulators. She could still feel the vibration from the pulse through the deck plates. She whispered to herself, one ship against hundreds. It wasn't arrogance, it was awe. The technology they carried was not meant for conquest. Not yet. It was meant for deterrence, and deterrence was working, back on the Kareth flagship. Systems flickered back to life one by one. Lights returned, engines hummed weakly, comms crackled with static. But the humiliation could not be undone. Admiral Tarvin finally spoke, his voice heavy with defeat. Transmit a sector-wide message. All ships, stand down. Do not engage, the officer hesitated. But Admiral, do it, Tarvin snapped, his tail slamming the floor. We cannot fight this. When the message went out, the blockade scattered. Disabled ships pulled back to regroup, tug. Vessels raced to assist stragglers, and in the middle of their retreat, the Vanguard passed through untouched. No one tried to stop it again. In the days that followed, the galaxy's order began to crack. The insectoid hives on the outer rim demanded stronger defenses. The crystalline colonies withdrew their fleets from joint patrols, refusing to risk them against humans. The reptilian worklings declared that the councils had failed to protect them, and hidden among it all, whispers spread, some voices hopeful, others fearful. Maybe the humans have returned to lead us. Maybe they've returned to destroy us. On a distant moon in the neutral zone, smugglers gathered in a hidden port. They replayed footage of the Vanguard again and again. One smuggler laughed nervously. If this is just one cruiser, what happens if they send a fleet? Another answered grimly. They won't need one. Meanwhile, in the Vanguard's war room, Captain Ward stood before a glowing map. The galaxy stretched across it. Dots of light marking systems and sectors. One star pulsed brighter than the rest. Ward stared at it, his jaw tightening. Any word from the scouts? He asked. Lieutenant Vance shook her head. No confirmation yet, just fragments. A distress beacon decades old, Ward nodded slowly. That's enough. We keep going. The officers exchanged uneasy looks. They all knew what the beacon meant. A missing colony ship, lost before most of them were even born. It had disappeared in alien space. And every search mission had been abandoned. But not by humans, not forever. On the alien flagship, Admiral Tarvin finally received a private transmission. It was from the Council itself. Report, they demanded. He stood tall, though. His voice shook. One cruiser, one human cruiser. They disabled us without killing a single soul. They are advancing deeper into the sector. We are powerless to stop them. The council chamber erupted into chaos. Then you must follow them. Find their purpose. Do not let them vanish. But Tarvin already knew. The humans were not here for war. If they had been, the blockade would already be wreckage. No, they were here for something else. And that frightened him more. Because no one in the galaxy understood human loyalty. No one understood what lengths they would go to protect their own. In the halls of the galaxy's academies, students replayed the footage. Professors tried to explain the science. Perhaps it was a new shield harmonics. Perhaps an undiscovered energy field. But the truth was simpler. It was human. And that word meant what no science could explain. On the Vanguard, Ward spoke quietly to his crew. We are not here to conquer. We are not here to kill. But we will not turn back. He let the silence hang. Every officer in the room felt the weight of his words. They knew this was more than a mission. It was a promise. The galaxy had expected them to fade into history, but history had come alive. Again, one cruiser had entered the sector, and the entire galaxy held its breath. Not out of respect, but out of fear of what would come next. Ward touched the glowing star on the map. The lost colony, the reason they had crossed into hostile space, he whispered, almost to himself. We're coming for you. You. The galaxy could not sleep. From the brightest core worlds to the frozen rim colonies, every species whispered the same words. One human cruiser. The phrase spread like fire, carrying fear, carrying doubt, carrying memories older than living generations, on the Kareth flagship. Admiral Tarvin sat in silence long after the Vanguard had passed. His fleet limped back to base, systems restored, but pride shattered. He replayed the moment again and again, the single pulse. The instant silence, the way hundreds of ships had become powerless with no effort. It was not just defeat, it was exposure. The galaxy had seen it, and no one would forget. Meanwhile, in the chambers of the High Council, voices clashed. Representatives of insectoid hives clattered their mandibles. In anger, they must be stopped now. If one cruiser can do this, a fleet will destroy us all. The crystalline delegates rippled their glowing forms. Do not provoke them. History proves violence will only bring ruin. Others shouted for alliances, for weapons research, for desperate measures. The chamber became chaos, yet under all the shouting, one truth settled like a shadow. None of them truly knew what the humans wanted. On a hidden station orbiting a dead star, another meeting took place. This one was not of diplomats, but of plotters. They were commanders, smugglers, warlords, those who thrived on conflict. They saw the arrival of the humans not as a warning, but as an opportunity. If the galaxy fears them, then we control the fear, one said. If we can trick them into firing first, the councils will unite against them. Another argued. The room filled with nods. So a plan was born to provoke the Vanguard, to paint them as aggressors, to drag the galaxy into war against them before fear turned into submission. Unaware of these whispers, the Vanguard kept its course, inside. The crew moved with practiced ease. They had no need to boast. No need to rush. Their purpose was fixed like a star in the captain's mind. Captain Elias Ward stood over the navigation table, his eyes on the glowing path ahead, the missing colony. The faint signal, the last echo of those who had vanished decades ago. Any updates? He asked. Lieutenant Vance shook her head. Still nothing clear, sir. Just fragments. Could be interference, could be deliberate, Ward nodded. We'll find them. No matter what lies in the way, on the lower decks. Engineer Imani Cole wiped sweat from her brow. The shield cores still hummed with energy from the pulse. She checked the regulators. Her hands steady though her heart was racing. She had seen what their ship could do. Yet even she wondered if every system in the galaxy turned against them. Could even the Vanguard hold? Her answer came in her own thoughts. Humans did not count odds the way others did. They simply refused to stop, far away. In a border system of the reptilian worklands, preparations began. The warlords gathered their fleets, their eyes burning. With pride and fury, they would not be shamed by one human ship. If the councils would not act, then they would. They sent coded orders to their hunters, intercept. Harris, force a response. If blood was drawn, it would not matter who struck first. The galaxy would see the humans as invaders. Days later, the Vanguard entered a narrow corridor of space, flanked by asteroid fields and nebulae, the perfect place for an ambush. Ward knew it, his crew knew it, yet they did not alter course. They had been watched since the blockade, and to change direction now would be to show weakness. The first attack came suddenly. Dozens of small Workland raiders burst from the asteroids, their engines burning bright, weapons hot. They moved like wolves, surrounding the human ship, biting at its edges. Plasma bolts struck the shields, missiles streaked in arcs, beams cut. Across the void, the Vanguard did not fire back, it simply endured. On the bridge, Ward stood calm. Shields? Stable, sir. Any damage? None, Ward nodded. Good, let them burn their teeth dull. But the raiders pressed harder. They broadcast false signals. They've attacked us. The humans fired first. They tried to jam transmissions, to twist the truth before it reached the galaxy. Ward's eyes narrowed. Record everything. Send clean feeds across open channels. Let them see who strikes first. The battle stretched. Though only one side truly fought, the raiders grew desperate, pushing closer, risking suicide runs. Ward raised one hand at last. Enough. Said, show them. At his signal, the Vanguard shifted. It did not unleash destruction. Instead, its hull shimmered, and a field rippled outward. The nearest raiders froze mid-flight, their engines dead, weapons silent. Then another wave spread, capturing ship after ship, until the entire swarm drifted powerless like insects in amber. The galaxy saw it leave. The humans had not fired a single shot, but the Workland's fleets floated helplessly, exposed, defeated. Humiliated, Ward spoke across the open channels, his voice calm but firm. We will not strike you down. But do not mistake restraint for weakness. We are not here for conquest. But if you force our hand, you will regret it. Every word carried across the stars. Billions listened, billions whispered. For the first time, the galaxy heard a human voice, not in recordings, not in myths, but live. And the calmness of that voice shook them deeper than any weapon. On the Workland homeworlds, fury burned. Their leaders raged at the humiliation. Some demanded full war. Others demanded silence. But among the common soldiers, fear took root. They had always been told humans were legends exaggerated by old enemies. Now they knew better. On the Kareth flagship, Admiral Tarvin watched the broadcast with weary eyes. The humans had proven their point again. But something else troubled him. They were holding back, he whispered to himself. They could destroy us all, yet they choose not to. Why? Back on the Vanguard, Ward stood alone in his quarters. He opened a small case and took out an old photograph. It showed a colony ship, its crew smiling, children waving, a flag of Earth behind them. His jaw tightened. This isn't about war. he said softly. "This is about family." He set the photo down and returned to the bridge. "Set course," he ordered. "Faster." The Vanguard surged forward. Behind it, the galaxy seethed with fear, anger, and confusion, but ahead lay the truth, the lost colony, the real reason one human cruiser had entered the sector. The galaxy was breaking apart. News of the Vanguard's victories spread through every channel. Every world, every outpost, one cruiser had humiliated the Kareth fleet. One cruiser had humbled the reptilian Worklings. Now everyone was forced to face a question they had hoped never to hear again. What do humans truly want? In the High Council chamber, chaos reigned. The insectoid delegates hissed with rage, demanding that fleets unite to crush the human ship before it grew bold. The crystalline envoys pulsed in calm waves, insisting that any act of war would be suicide. The aquatic representatives flooded the chamber floor with ripples, arguing that diplomacy was the only answer. But no agreement could be made. Fear poisoned every word. Mistrust split every alliance. Meanwhile, in hidden corners of the powders of the galaxy, factions whispered. Smugglers saw profit in the panic. Warlords saw chances to expand territory. Assassins and mercenaries were hired to seek ways to strike the humans. And in the darkest halls of power, conspirators decided there was only one path left. If the Vanguard reached its destination, the galaxy would see humans not just as strong, but as unstoppable, so they plotted to end the mission before the truth could be revealed. On board the Vanguard, the crew pushed deeper into alien space. The path ahead was marked by faint echoes of a lost signal. The distress beacon of the missing colony ship, Captain Elias Ward, stood over the glowing star map, his jaw set. Every step forward was not only a mission, it was a vow. Lieutenant Vance leaned closer to her console. "Sir, multiple sensor contacts at long range." Ward turned his eyes toward her. "Identify." Her fingers tapped quickly. "Unclear. The signals are fragmented." "Could be ships hiding in the nebula ahead." Ward nodded slowly. "They will come. We expected this." "Hold steady." On the lower decks, Engineer Imani Cole adjusted the shield cores. She could feel the hum of the ship as if it were alive. She muttered under her breath, "They'll throw everything at us before we get there." "They can't risk the truth." Her assistant frowned. "What truth?" Imani's eyes hardened. "That humans never abandon their own." Far ahead, in the swirling clouds of a dense nebula, the trap waited. Hundreds of ships from different factions had gathered. Workland destroyers, insectoid carriers, mercenary frigates, even pirate cruisers painted in stolen colors. It was not an official fleet, it was a conspiracy. A gathering of those who feared that the galaxy would bend to human will if the Vanguard succeeded. They were united by fear, not by loyalty. And they waited in silence, hidden in the clouds. The Vanguard entered the nebula, its dark hull cutting through glowing gas and shadow. Visibility dropped, sensors flickered. The stars outside vanished into mist. Lieutenant Vance glanced at her captain. "They're here," she said, her voice steady but tight. Ward nodded. "Let them show themselves." The trap snapped shut. Ships burst from the clouds on all sides, their weapons glowing, their engines burning. The nebula lit up like fire as hundreds of targets surrounded the human cruiser. Comes, filled with overlapping voices, shouts, demands, threats. "Human vessel, stop immediately. You will not go further. Turn back or be destroyed." Ward sat calm in his chair. His crew waited for his command. He spoke with measured words. "Broadcast open channel." The comms officer obeyed, and Ward's voice carried across the battlefield. "This is the Vanguard. We are not here for war. We are not here for conquest. We are here for what was lost. Stand aside, and you will not be harmed." The conspirators laughed, their captain sending mocking replies. "Your words mean nothing. You are one ship, we are hundreds. Today, the galaxy takes its stand." And then the trap unleashed its fury. Hundreds of weapons fired at once. Plasma bolts, missiles, beams, and torpedoes rained down. The nebula shook with light, the void itself trembling. It was the largest strike since the ancient wars. All aimed at one shadow. The vanguard endured. Its shields rippled. Its hull shimmered. The storm of energy broke against it, bending around it like wind around a mountain. The ship did not move, did not falter. It absorbed the storm, and when the light faded, it still drifted forward, calm, relentless, unstoppable, on the bridge. The crew reported with crisp precision. Shields stable, no damage. Power reserves steady. Ward nodded once. Then it is time. At his signal, the vanguard released its second demonstration. Not a single weapon, not a beam of destruction. Instead, the space around it rippled. The nebula clouds twisted. The gravity fields warped. The entire fleet surrounding it shuddered as their systems scrambled. Engines cut out. Weapons jammed. Targeting sensors blinded. Hundreds of ships drifted helpless. In the mist, their crews shouting in panic. Ward's voice carried again across the battlefield. You have made your choice. We will not strike you down, but you will not stop us. Remember this mercy when fear tempts you to lie. The galaxy watched it live. Billions saw the fleets of dozens of factions humbled in seconds. No deaths, no wreckage, only silence and shame. And the one human cruiser pressing forward as if no one else existed. On the conspirators' private channels, voices screamed in anger. This is impossible. No one can fight them. We must end them now. But their ships were powerless and their pride broken inside the vanguard. Imani Cole exhaled slowly. She stared at her readouts, still glowing green. She whispered, "They can't win. Not against this. But they don't understand the ship is not the weapon. The humans are." On the Kareth flagship, Admiral Tarvin watched the broadcast again. He closed his eyes and shook his head. "They warned us," he muttered. "They warned us they were not here for war. And still, we forced their hand. Back." In the council chamber, panic gave way to silence. The footage had silenced even the loudest voices. One by one, they realized the truth. The galaxy was no longer in control. The humans were on the vanguard. Ward stood before the star map. The lost colony's beacon flickered faintly, closer than ever. He placed his hand against the glowing star. "Almost there," he whispered. Behind him, his crew exchanged looks. They knew the final stretch would be the hardest. If the galaxy had failed to stop them with fleets, with blockades, with traps, then the last resistance would be desperate. And desperate enemies were the most dangerous of all. The nebula thinned, the stars returned. The vanguard emerged from the trap untouched, and ahead lay the system where the missing colony's signal still pulsed, weak but alive. The crew straightened, their eyes hard with focus. They had not come this far to fail now. Ward gave the order in a quiet, steady voice. "Set full speed." "We finish this." The vanguard surged forward. Behind it lay fleets humiliated and conspiracies broken. Ahead lay the truth. The galaxy still held its breath, for the real reason behind humanity's return was about to be revealed. The stars ahead glowed brighter as the nebula faded. At the center of the system, a weak pulse blinked across the void. It was the signal the humans had chased for decades, the distress beacon of the lost colony ship on the Vanguard's bridge. The crew sat in silence, every officer's eyes fixed on the faint rhythm of the beacon. It was old, broken, flickering like a candle nearly out of flame. But it was still alive. Captain Elias Ward's jaw tightened as he stared at it. "After all this time," he murmured. Lieutenant Caravance whispered, "They're still calling." The ship closed the distance. Sensors cleared the haze at last. The image appeared. A massive wreck drifting near a scarred moon. The once proud colony ship, its hull broken, engines torn apart. But faint life signs glimmered inside, weak yet undeniable. The bridge crew gasped. "Survivors," the sensor officer said, his voice trembling. Ward leaned forward, his voice firm. "Bring us in. Prepare rescue teams." As the Vanguard approached, the galaxy watched. Every channel carried the live feed. Billions of eyes fixed on the wreck. The councils, the warlords, the conspirators all forced to see what the humans had come for. Not conquest, not glory, but rescue inside the colony ship. The survivors stirred as their systems flickered awake. Generations had been born and died within those broken walls. They had lived in shadows, in struggle, in hope that someone would answer. And now, the answer came. Through cracked viewports, they saw the dark shape of the Vanguard. A ship unlike any other, but to them, it meant only one word. Homeward led the first boarding team themselves. They crossed the void in shuttles, docking with the broken vessel. The air inside was thin, the lights dim, but voices echoed through the halls. Weak but alive, children peered from behind corners. Wide-eyed, old men and women wept as they saw the uniforms. One survivor stepped forward, her voice hoarse yet strong. "You came back," she whispered. Ward bowed his head slightly. "We never stopped trying." The survivors were escorted onto the Vanguard. Medics rushed to treat them. Food and water were handed out. For many, it was the first time they had tasted real nourishment in years. The crew of the Vanguard worked tirelessly, and all of it was broadcast across the stars, on the alien flagship still drifting far behind. Admiral Tarvin watched with disbelief. He had expected war. He had expected destruction. Instead, he saw mercy. He saw people crossing hostile space not to conquer, but to save. His chest felt heavy. He realized the galaxy had misunderstood everything. In the council chambers, silence fell. For once, no one shouted, no one argued. They watched as humans carried children from the wreck. They watched as the Vanguard gave aid instead of fire. The insectoid delegates lowered their mandibles in shame. The crystalline envoys pulsed dim with thought. The aquatic representatives whispered in their watery voices. They fight not for power, but for their own. But not all were moved. In the hidden corners where conspirators gathered, anger burned. "They made fools of us," one snarled. "They show mercy to make us look weak," another spat. They plotted even now, but their power was crumbling. Because the galaxy had seen too much. On the Vanguard's bridge, Ward looked at the feet of the survivors, children laughing with the crew, elders crying in relief. He turned to his officers. "Transmit message to all networks." The comms officer nodded. The captain stood tall, his voice steady. "This is Captain Elias Ward, of the Terran cruiser Vanguard. We entered this sector for one reason: to bring our people home. We did not come for conquest. We did not come for war. But know this: humanity does not abandon its own. If ever our people call, we will answer. And if any stand in our way, they will fall." The message spread across the galaxy like fire through dry fields. Billions heard it. Billions felt it. For some, it was a warning. For others, it was a promise. For all, it was unforgettable. Admiral Tarvin lowered his head. The council envoys whispered among themselves. The worklings snarled in humiliation, but dared not move. And across the galaxy, ordinary people whispered new words. "Perhaps the humans are not monsters. Perhaps they are guardians." The conspirators raged, but even they knew the tide had turned. Fear was still there, yes, but now it was joined by respect. The galaxy could no longer deny the truth. Humans had returned on the Vanguard. Ward stood in his quarters once more. He looked at the old photograph of the colony ship. This time, it did not bring sorrow. This time, it brought peace. He placed it back in its case and whispered, "Mission complete." Yet he knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy would never be the same. Factions would scheme. Wars might still come. But now, every system, every council, every warlord would think twice before striking, because they had seen what one cruiser could do, and they had heard the human vow. As the Vanguard turned for home, its survivors safe aboard, the stars stretched out before it. The galaxy still held its breath, not from fear of destruction, but from awe of a truth it had forgotten. Humans did not come to conquer. They came to endure. They came to protect. They came to remind the galaxy that their silence had never been Weakness had only been waiting, and now the wait was over.